Hi, friends. Thank you for tuning in to the Concussion Coach podcast. I'm Bethany Lewis, the Concussion Coach. I'm a neurological occupational therapist and certified life coach, and I specialize in guiding people through their concussion recovery journey. I am passionate about helping people understand their injury, speed up their recovery, and reclaim control over their life post-concussion. The purpose of this podcast is to help increase awareness of concussions and the impact they can have on a person's life, and to bring hope to people who have suffered a concussion and those who love them. I firmly believe that sharing stories and knowledge about concussions will bring important light and understanding to this misunderstood and often invisible injury. The information in this podcast is meant to bring that awareness and hope and is not meant as medical advice. The opinions shared are those of the interviewees and my own. If you are suffering with lingering concussion symptoms, I have created a concussion coaching program specifically for you. I will be your mentor to guide you through your recovery journey, offering help with understanding and managing your symptoms, setting achievable goals, and learning how to manage your own thoughts and nervous system in order to get control over your life again. If this program sounds like something that would help you or someone you love, sign up for a free consultation. In the consultation, you'll get valuable information and resources and gain hope for your future. Sign up for your free consultation at the link in the show notes or at my website, www.theconcussioncoach.com. Hi, friends. Welcome back to the Concussion Coach podcast. I'm so excited to welcome my guest, Cristabelle Braden, to the podcast today. Cristabelle is an award-winning singer, songwriter, speaker, writer, podcast host, and advocate for brain injury. She has fought through multiple traumatic brain injuries to come out on the other side carrying a strong message of resilience, hope, and healing. In the early stages of brain recovery, songs began to pour out of her. Her incredible journey has taken her from hospital rooms, relearning daily life tasks in brain injury rehabilitation, to platforms across the nation. Whether speaking or singing, she brings her powerful testimony and a message of freedom, healing, and love wherever she goes. Cristabelle is devoted to bringing support and education through her popular brain injury podcast, Hope Survives, and online support community, Hope After Head Injury. Her years of commitment and attentiveness to brain injury survivors and their families through her online support community is evident and inspirational. Highly respected in the brain injury community, Cristabelle is a member of the Board of Directors for Brain Injury Association of Pennsylvania, BIAPA, former member of the Board of Directors for the Council on Brain Injury, COBI, and has advocated on a statewide and national level on Capitol Hill with the Brain Injury Association of America, which is BIAA. So those are a lot of letters and a lot of cool things that you are doing. And I'm so grateful that you're here today. Cristabelle, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today.
Thank you so much for having me, Bethany. You are just awesome. I love what you do. And I'm so glad we were finally able to do this. For all you listening, she's so awesome. The first day we were scheduled to do this was like a month and a half ago. And I was having a symptom flare-up day. And we got on Zoom and she looked at me and she's like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "I'm really flared up today, but I'm willing to do it." She's like, "Let's just reschedule." So thank you for just your sensitivity to that and your patience. And I'm glad we're finally getting to do this.
Me too. I'm so excited. Thank you. And yes, I get it. When people are not feeling great, that's not the time to push a podcast interview. So I'm just grateful that you were honest and expressed how you're feeling. So let this be at the very beginning here a good point to make that it's okay to tell people if you're not feeling great and reschedule. So and you have a lot of experience dealing with the head injury thing. So I would love for you to share your story. Oh, actually, though, before we jump into your story, one of the things that we did talk about on the last almost interview was how we're both from Delaware, and that made my heart so happy. Anyway, it was really fun to see that we have.
Yeah, that's where I was born and put my childhood there. Yeah.
Yes, me too. So shout out to Delaware. Yay. I was actually just back home a little bit ago, and it made my heart happy. We caught the tail end of the colors of the fall. So by the time this comes out, it'll probably be to winter, but it was a happy time for me to be back east. So tell us a little bit more about you. And we know that you're from Delaware, but anything else that you want us to know before we jump into the head injury story?
Yeah, well, I've been in Pennsylvania since actually right after my brain injury as a teenager. And yeah, I mean, anything else before the story? Well, I just got married this summer. So I'm in a season of life change and transition. And I also am a singer-songwriter. I released a new album this past year called Restoration. And I love people and Jesus and helping people with brain injuries to know they're not alone.
Fantastic. We're meant to be friends. I love those same things. That's awesome. So it sounds like your brain injury was a while ago. So when you were in high school, and I mean, you're young, so it wasn't that long ago. But tell us a little bit about what happened there and your experience, and we'll just kind of go into the whole thing.
Yeah. So I've had multiple brain injuries, but the first one that started everything was in December 2007. I'm actually coming up on my 17-year anniversary,
Wow.
which is a long time. I was 14 when it happened, so I've lived more of my life with a brain injury than without one. But the first brain injury was definitely the most well, yeah, well, of course it was the most significant because it thrust me into the world of brain injury. But I had a lot of undiagnosed underlying conditions that now have been diagnosed, but like vision problems, vestibular dysfunction, all sorts of things that, doctors, the first neurologist I saw just dismissed. So I kept falling and I kept hitting my head over and over again. And when I look back, I think, if I would have maybe gotten the treatment that's out there today when I first had my injury, I probably wouldn't have this lifelong disability that I have had I gotten the right treatment. But by not having the right treatment, imagine just walking around with vestibular dysfunction, never even heard of the word vestibular system or anything. And I just kept hitting my head on everything. I kept falling. And I've had over 12 more diagnosed concussions and brain injuries. And I've had a lot more hits on the head that were undiagnosed as far as like flare ups or whatever. Like I'd hit my head on something, be like, oh, it's probably not like a full concussion. I probably don't need to go to the doctor. I just need rest or whatever. And so like pretty much my life has been cascade of concussions over and over again. Thankfully, the most recent bad one was December 2019. And
Great.
since
That's
then,
great.
I've gotten so much good help and so much of the right things and dysautonomia diagnosis, vision help, all sorts of things that I didn't have before. So I actually haven't had a major concussion since then. Yay. But I have had COVID, which caused similar flare ups. So it is what it is. So it's hard for me to share like how my brain injury happened because my story isn't just one injury. Now I could go into the details of the first brain injury if you would like to hear it, but I just don't. The focus on how it happened is a lot less of my story than that it kept happening.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. Let's not dive into the individual things, but more of like, yeah, your experience since you're like a pro with concussions now. So what
Something nobody ever asks to be a pro at.
right. No, I'm sorry. But what were some of the things that you learned along the way, or like how was this overall experience for you? And yeah, how did it kind of play out?
Yeah, that's a really broad question. So I think I'm going to start with just symptoms and then we can kind of like go
Perfect.
from there. So my first brain injury, my symptoms were really intense. Like I was 14 and I was acting like I was about 4 probably. I had right-sided muscle atrophy and my CAT scan was blurry because I moved and we found that out later and the neurologist never got it reordered. They think I might have had like a mini stroke or something because a lot of my symptoms presented that way, but I never got an official diagnosis on that. But my entire right side of my body atrophied and my reflex got messed up. I had really bad aphasia. My short-term memory was literally like Dory Finding Nemo. Like I would forget what was happening in the conversation I was in. I would meet the same people over again. I couldn't get myself dressed, not because I didn't have the mobility to, but because I couldn't remember the order my clothes went on. And I am the oldest of 3 girls. My 2 sisters, one was 10 when it happened, and the other was 4. She's 10 years younger than me. And she was teaching me stuff. We would watch Sesame Street together, equally entertained. And I went from being like an honors AP student, ahead a grade in school, like pre-calculus at 14. Like I was very academically minded. Reading always came easy to me, to special ed and having to have tutoring and not able to keep up. And I eventually I had to repeat a grade at school and I was, eventually able to graduate high school because we realized I had to get the right accommodations. I got an IEP and I needed more time. That was mostly what it was. When I was overstimulated and overwhelmed, my cognitive processing was not there. And my math teacher was like, this is so interesting because she can still do the complex math, but her addition's wrong. So it'd be like my like simple addition or multiplication would be wrong, but like I was still able to do like the complex parts of the problem, which was really interesting to them of like, okay, there's still something going on there. Like, but it was like everything was jumbled, everything was foggy, nothing made sense. My whole personality like changed and shifted. I lost the ability to understand sarcasm or social cues. Like I literally like, oh my gosh, I lost so many friends because I was unintentionally rude. I've told this story before. People have listened to my podcast, but I think it's relevant here. There was a girl in high school that was like, hey, do these jeans like make my butt look big? And I was like, well, maybe you should try a different shirt. But my mom's like, no, Cristabelle, like she just wanted to hear they looked fine. And I'm like, well, you wanted me to lie? Like, I'm like, like it was like I wasn't trying to be mean. I just didn't have a filter. And I couldn't understand like social context and it was a lot. And then I got another injury. I slipped on the ice waiting for the school bus. I got another injury falling down steps. And it was so frustrating because like I don't remember the whole first year after the brain injury. And they start to come like memories start to come. There's a lot of years that are very much blurred together for me, but I just remember an overarching feeling of frustration, of exhaustion, of loneliness. I remember this one moment that I looked in the mirror and I looked at my eyes and I didn't know who I was. I was like, I can't do anything I used to do. I was an athlete. I did dance. Like my balance was so bad. I couldn't do any of that stuff. I tried, but I couldn't keep up. My face became asymmetrical. Like you can even see like today, like one side of my face droops, especially when I get tired. My smile was different. My singing voice was different because the right side of my body literally weakened all the way down. And I had a voice teacher that was like, yeah, like one side of your soft palate isn't raising. And I was always a singer since I was a kid. And so like it was like there wasn't a single aspect of my life that wasn't affected. And it was disorienting, overwhelming.
Holy cow. Yes. And this happened back, like you were saying, back before we know what we know now and the treatments are there and people, I feel like the reason that you and I are both so passionate about putting these podcasts out is because there's still a huge lack of general knowledge about all of this, but there is a lot more information out there. And when you had your injury, it was before all of this. And so I can't even imagine how isolating it would feel. And just, yeah, to have every single aspect of your life be altered or different and not feel the same.
Mhm.
Is there anything you want to share about that experience of like not knowing even like who you were or how to deal with the people around you?
Yeah, I mean, I would start to move forward. So the doctors had told my parents I'd probably never finish high school. They were very, very discouraging on like where my brain injury was at. And like, yeah, she's severely brain injured. Like, she's not going to finish high school. Like, don't expect her to live a normal life. Those are the kind of things they were telling my parents. And once I started to get in some treatments, my parents like found some out of the box treatments. I did something called tomatis therapy, which was mostly used in autistic children. At the time, it was like one of the only things that we could find that my mom said it gave me my smile back. Like I smiled spontaneously again for the first time doing that. And it's a very integrative type therapy. And so now like knowing what I know, I'm like, wow, like that was actually kind of what I needed because they used music and they used like tapping and they used like different sides of your body with certain things. And so it was very like integrative in its approach. They just didn't call it that, right? So that was like 2008. And they were like, we'll try anything. So like it was mostly used like for autism, but they were willing to try with me with my brain injury. And it helped me a lot. But then I would start to do better and I was still able to like pull A's in some of my classes. It just took like so much time and energy and accommodations out of me. Like it would take me like double time to do my test, but I could get the right answers. Or I couldn't do like an essay without a word bank because I needed a memory jog. And like some of my teachers, like I had an accommodation for multiple choice instead of fill in the blank, and things like that because I could do it as long as I had like a memory jog to help me. I couldn't pull something out of thin air, but I could pull the information if I had something to jog my memory. And so school was hard. I finished high school and I was able to go to college. I kept getting more brain injuries. I was trying all these different medications for headaches. I was constantly like I felt like I was like treading water and my head would go under occasionally. And then I would like gasp for air. That was like literally 10 years of my life. That's how I felt. Just, it was a lot. And that's kind of what inspired me to start my Hope After Head Injury group. And just, I'm in the social media generation. So I made like a Facebook page and a Twitter page in 2012 called Hope After Head Injury, just talking about brain injuries. But like I was dealing with my own identity crisis and I was like ashamed a little bit of my injury, or so like I didn't put my name on it. It was just like this like anonymous page, blog thing online, and people started following it. It started like, commenting. And I'm like, oh, wow, like there's other people out there that deal with this. Maybe I could help them. And I posted my first video in 2014 and it started to get shared. And I posted one called You Look Fine, the struggle of an invisible injury in the beginning of 2015. And it went like mini viral. Like in one weekend, it had like over 20,000 views, which at that time on Facebook was a lot. And I started getting invitations to speak at like brain injury conferences and stuff. And it just, it just all kind of grew organically over time. Meanwhile, I'm still struggling with my own symptoms. And I felt like every time I started to make progress, I'd get another injury and I get a setback. So my journey has been a lot of like forward steps and setbacks and a lot of ups and downs. And I talk about that a lot with my support groups and on my podcast too, because like I know that there's no such thing as like a smooth sailing, linear healing journey. Even if you know the right things to do, like the brain is complex and there's so many other factors to it. I don't know if that answered your question, but dating was hard. Finding friends was hard. I felt like I was always, unfortunately, like messing up relationships, not realizing like with the best of intentions, but just, I don't know, it takes two to have a good relationship, right? And the friendships that have been able to be maintained are the ones that when I would say, hey, if I don't text you back, it's not personal. I just don't remember. And it has nothing to do with if I care or not. My memory is no respect on if I care about something or not. I'll just remember it or I won't. And, a lot of people misinterpreting forgetting as they don't care enough to remember. Mm-hmm. So like I have one friend I became friends with about 10 years ago. And I told her like, hey, like, you text me. If I don't answer, send me another one. If I don't answer, send me another one. Like, please, like and we've stayed good friends. And she was just a bridesmaid at my wedding. And I would sometimes go months without answering her because she lives kind of far away. And so like, but she would just keep reaching out. And like, those are the friendships that have been able to be maintained, the ones that were willing to learn about my brain injury and didn't take it personally, because I would tell them, don't take it personally, but some people still would. Anyway, I'm rambling. You asked me a question now.
I love it. No, you brought up so many things that I think would be so good. Like we could go down so many different rabbit holes here. I am curious. I want to go back to the therapy that you mentioned at the beginning that they use for kids with autism. What was it called?
It was called Tomatis. I honestly have not done a ton of research into it nowadays. Tomatis. There are Tomatis therapy centers around there. Website's tomatis.com. It's an auditory stimulation program. They use music and neurosensory stimulation to improve brain function, basically. And that worked really well for me because music was a huge part of my recovery. But it's not like normally used for people with brain injury, but my parents were desperate. They were like, we will take her anywhere, because I had done PT and at the local children's hospital, and then they kicked me out of the program in 6 weeks because of insurance, because they set my goals too low. Because when I first came in, like, let's say I was at like 20%, right? So they set them at like 50%. But like before my brain injury, I was an AP student. They should have set them at 90. So like they set them at, and as soon as I started to make progress in the hospital's PT therapy program, they were like, sorry, we can't keep her anymore. She's done. And my mom's like, not to be graphic, but I mean, I think I've said this on my podcast, but like my mom had to help me like in the bathroom, like wipe me in the bathroom like a child and like help me shower, because I just was not cognitive there, especially when I was overstimulated and exhausted. And she was like, I'm still helping her in the bathroom and you're telling me like she's being discharged from therapy. Like this just makes no sense.
Met her goals.
Yeah. So my parents found, and the Tomatis thing, I did it for it's like on and off. They would do like intensives for like 8 days. Then you would spend like 6 weeks like integrating it, and then you'd go back for an intensive. And now I know that format actually works well for brain injuries.
Yes,
That's
it
what a
does.
lot of concussion centers do. And but I don't think they even do brain injury now. But that was just like something my parents heard about by word of mouth, and they paid for it out of pocket, which put them in a pretty rough financial situation too. My mom says she's so grateful they were able to do that at the time. But on the other side, like they spent like their life savings on my hospital bills, right? So it's like it's
Mhm.
hard. Like you can find therapies all you want, but it's hard to find the things that work. And I don't want to go down rabbit holes, but yeah. So I did that in like 2008, 2009 ish, like around right after my first brain injury.
Yeah, it is. It's so hard. Yeah, we don't have to go into all of the griping about the system as it is, but it is the way that it's set up, is at least for insurance, most of the time it does not provide, you're not able to get the kind of treatment that is most effective in the way that insurance will pay for it.
Mhm.
So,
But
yeah.
nowadays, there are people like you, and there's so many awesome resources out there that really know about concussions, which is awesome. So,
Yeah,
th-
it is. It's better if you're listening to this podcast. You're in a better spot. Just the mere fact that it's happened later in time than before. So yeah,
yes.
one of the things that you brought up, and oh man, I just would love to talk about all of these things, the setbacks, and you and I are both very passionate about this concept of hope. Why don't we like focus in on hope for just a second, and then I want to see how like you were able to maintain hope through setbacks, or like how if you were, or like how that played out. But when you hear the word hope, like what is it to you, and how do you think it fits in the context of a brain injury recovery journey?
Yeah. Okay. Do you want to start with the hope or start with the setbacks?
Start with the hope.
Okay. So for me, I had to realize that hope and positivity are not the same thing. So many people view hope as having an optimistic and positive attitude. And I don't think they're the same thing. I think that hope thrives in the dark. And I think that if there was no struggle, we wouldn't need hope. We wouldn't have hope. If we were just happy or positive all the time, I think there's like this toxic positivity where people are like, just, it'll get better. It's like, well, what if it doesn't? It doesn't, like, I mean, it might get a little better, but I don't know. It can be hard. And so for me, like, hope is something that shines in the dark. It's choosing hope. It's choosing that, yeah, everything sucks right now. My life is hard. My brain hurts, but I'm going to choose that tomorrow could maybe be a little better. I'm going to do what I can to take a step forward. And I'm going to trust. For me, my faith is a big part. I can't talk about hope without faith. Like, trusting that God has a plan for my life and that this is God's plan A for me, even though it's my plan B, that God already has a plan in motion to bring restoration. And that my new album is called Restoration. So we're talking a lot about the early times of my journey, but like I'm in a much better place now. I still have daily symptoms and I still have a lot of flare ups, but 16 years later, like I see like there were a lot of beautiful things that came out of the brain injury. And if I never had the brain injury, I would not have the compassion I have. I would not have the empathy or be able to help other people who are going through it. And so I would never be writing music. I started writing music in my brain injury recovery. I never wrote songs before. I never even played guitar before the brain injury. I just sang. Like I did theater and like church choir. And I quit piano lessons as a kid. Like I just didn't like to practice. And now like I'm a songwriter, and I'm actually a member of the Grammys. I'm a voting member of the Grammys as of this year. It's like I got nominated to join that. And I'm like, how did I get here? Like, it's just like, I don't know. I mean, I would not say that I'm grateful that I had a brain injury because of how horrible it was on my family, and how hard it was on them. It's hard to be grateful for something bad and hard, but I can say I'm grateful something good came out of it and that, God has shown himself faithful again and again. And so there is hope. And I believe for every single person with a brain injury, like I believe you were created for a purpose. God has a plan for our lives and everybody goes through something hard. And brain injury is just my hard. Like but everybody has something. Every single person on this planet goes through a struggle in life. And this is happens to be what my struggle is, but there is hope for things to get better. And there's hope in the new research and in neuroplasticity. Like God wired our brains to heal. And in 2007, in 2008, my mom went to the neurologist we were seeing at the time, and she was reading these articles on neuroplasticity. She's like, hey, like, I've read about neuroplasticity. And he's like, that doesn't exist. Like, no, there's no such thing. Like neuroplasticity, it's not real. That's like pseudoscience. And, obviously that's how neurologists were practicing 15 years ago. Right. So like the way that the brain and the landscape of healing for brain injury has changed in this time period in our lifetime and how it will continue to improve. Like that's hope to me that like we're discovering how God made our brains and we're being able to find treatments and resources. And there's new research coming out every day that there really is healing and healing really is possible. So I think to me, going back to the beginning, like hope is not this like weird positivity of like life sucks, but I'm just going to like try and hold on. Like, no, like there's something tangible to hold on to for hope. And there's new research, there's new things like, and for me, it's the Lord, like knowing that like God has a plan and I can trust that he is good, even if life doesn't feel good right now.
Yes. Oh my gosh. So many good things that you said there. I thank you so much for all of that. And I love that idea, that perspective that hope isn't the same thing as positivity. I don't know that I've made that connection before, but I think that's so true. And it's not just like a blind optimism. It's a choice to have that desire for that goodness and believe that it could be possible. And that hope shines in the dark, that idea of that dichotomy and that the difference is what makes like that opposition is what makes the hope shine brighter. Like you wouldn't be able to see it as much.
That's what we need. And and I think that it's not beneficial to anyone to say like, hey, it's okay. Life's going to get better. Like it's when your brain hurts so bad, your head feels like it's going to fall off your body. Like that's not helpful. Like it's more helpful to say, yeah, this hurts. This is horrible. I'm so sorry you're going through this. This pain is really bad. Let's acknowledge the realness of where I'm at today and hope that tomorrow could be a little better. Or if not tomorrow, next year, and just like taking small steps towards improvement. And I always think, and this maybe goes with your setbacks question, I've had to learn to adopt a mentality of like, okay, what is in my control that I can do to help my brain? And brain health is really important. So being able to have good nutrition and being able to work on my sleep hygiene and recognizing when my nervous system's flared up and doing some deep breathing or things that I can do. Like I've learned so much over the last 5 years on like, I got diagnosed with dysautonomia. So I'm like, oh, for so long, I thought I was just out of shape. So I pushed myself harder and then I'd keep getting flared up. Now I'm like, oh, it's not normal for you to feel like you're going to pass out when you go up the stairs. Like, that doesn't mean I'm out of shape. Like that's not normal. Like, oh, okay. Like I actually have like a reason for this. And so, it's helped so much. Like compression socks and salt. Like who would have known? Like my whole life would feel different.
That's amazing. Okay. I love that you brought that up. The dysautonomia thing is I don't know. The whole thing about the nervous system and like what you were just explaining about like learning new things in the last 5 years. That same with me. Like I feel like the increased knowledge is so powerful. Like we really can make such a difference with the things that we know now. And if you want, I would love to jump down before we go too deeply into the setbacks thing. We'll take a sidetrack to dysautonomia. Is there anything that you want people to know about dysautonomia who have maybe are just hearing this word for the first time or have heard about it but don't know a lot? Like what's your experience with it? What do you want people to know?
Yeah, well, I've learned that most concussions, brain injuries, and having COVID, a lot of times will cause dysautonomia, which is dysfunction of your autonomic nervous system. So in simple terms, like your nervous system can't regulate and switch between the sympathetic and parasympathetic states anymore. And you get stuck in this fight or flight mode. And I had it misdiagnosed as anxiety. So I was seeing this neuropsychologist that was doing biofeedback. She's like, calm your heart rate. Listen to when your heart rate gets high. But it wasn't my mental health. Like it wasn't anxiety. And so it was like, it didn't help. And then I felt like a failure because I'm like, why can't I calm my own heart rate down like I'm supposed to? Like, what's wrong with me? And now, like, once I got the diagnosis for dysautonomia, I'm like, oh, my blood pressure gets really low. So my heart rate goes high to compensate for it. And it gets misdiagnosed as anxiety because it feels like anxiety in your body. So like when you're in fight or flight mode, like that's actually a good thing. That's protective. Like when your body should have that mode, you're just only supposed to be in the mode when you're being chased by a bear or in a bad situation. You're not supposed to be in fight or flight mode sitting on your couch at home petting your cat. Like that's not normal. So it's like realizing like going up the stairs is not the same thing as being chased by a bear. And my body was always reacting to it on this extreme level. And so like it affects your everything, hormones, everything. And so it's been really freeing for me to realize, oh, this is physical and neurological and not psychological. And for so many years, I was like, I'm just such an anxious person. Like, I have so much anxiety. And it was actually my body being stuck in fight or flight mode. So, if you feel on edge all the time, if you have a concussion, like if it's rare for you to feel calm, you probably maybe have this. And I would look into finding a clinician that specializes in concussion and knows about dysautonomia to be able to help. I got my diagnosis through a cardiologist, but I was lucky because he's somebody who knows about concussions. Not everyone would do that. Now, POTS is a form of dysautonomia, and it's I don't have POTS as far as I know. I've never fully passed out. I just get really lightheaded and out of it. And then it takes my balance off. It makes like everything feel like I'm like in this boat or on this fog. And I also had ataxia where like my body didn't do the right things that it was telling it to do. And I saw Dr. Jeremy Schmo at the Functional Neurology Center in Minnesota. I did intensive with him and changed my life. And he was able to really help me find out, some of these things. He corrected my vision completely. And I was able to stop wearing my prism in one intensive week. Yeah, like changed my life. And so realizing like my eyes just weren't working together, right? And I was in prisms. Man, I can't talk about 17 years in one podcast episode, but we're hitting the like, some of the points. But yeah, dysautonomia, finding out that diagnosis was huge for me because I wanted to exercise, and I know exercise is good for the brain, right? So I would push myself to like go on the treadmill, but then like I would feel like there was a band being squeezed around my head, and then I would feel like I was going to pass out. And I'm like, I'm so out of shape. And I was so hard on myself mentally. Like I had really bad negative mental patterns of like self-talk and just really, really mean to myself in my head for a long time. And in my 20s, I was in a bad abusive relationship, and that didn't help. I had the trauma from that. That was when my neuropsychologist said to me, Cristabelle, I've helped you with some of your brain injury stuff, but you need to find a trauma therapist because this is out of my wheelhouse. So I had to find a different therapist, and I found a therapist that specializes in trauma. And she has helped me so much on how to reframe my thought patterns and recognize when I'm starting to go there. But it's weird when you have a brain injury because it's not, sometimes you can't control it because it's my nervous system. So, and sometimes it's like, and I had frontal lobe damage. So sometimes like my brain will take me places that my mind doesn't want to go. But it's like, I get these impulses and I lose my filter. And like, it just takes a lot of like, self-regulation and learning your own thought patterns. And for me, prayer in helping to integrate all of that, and music and songwriting was a huge part of that for me as well. So I feel like I'm rambling, but I hope there was something helpful in all of that.
Yes, so many helpful things. Again, I just think that having people have a chance to hear what it's like and know that they're not alone in it, I think that's huge. And the points that you're bringing up, it just shows how complex and intense a brain injury is. It influences all of the areas. It influences the mental health. Like even though you may have been misdiagnosed with anxiety, that's not an uncommon thing for people to be dealing with as well. And sometimes it's hard to tease out.
Well, I did have anxiety for sure. It just wasn't just that.
It wasn't. Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
And I think that's helpful for people to know as well. Like a lot of times people might just think that it's anxiety, not realize that dysautonomia could be happening.
Yeah.
There's just so many systems at play. And that is why I think music, which taps into a lot of different systems as well, can be so therapeutic and so beneficial. And I love that that art form has been so healing for you. It's really cool to talk. I've talked to quite a few people who found a new passion for a creative outlet that they didn't know they had before, or, increased one that they already had to some degree in after a brain injury. It's really cool to see the beauty that comes out of these ashes sometimes. And I do want to talk about that too, but let's circle back for a second. I'm curious, with the dysautonomia, what have you found to be particularly helpful in when you have a flare-up, or if you're noticing things are happening, what helps you calm your system?
Yeah. Well, before we go into that, I just want to say something what you said about all the systems. Like, okay, this is something that I want everybody listening, if you've had a concussion, to understand. Your entire body is like going crazy right now because your brain controls every part of your body. So don't pay attention to other systems. Like if your foot feels like I had my right foot, I had a foot drag. And we started to notice that the front of my right sneakers would be worn down like way more than the front of my left sneakers because a foot drop. That's what it is. I had a foot drop, but it was subtle, right? That it wasn't like found. Like my mom was like, "Why is your right shoes all looking like this?" And we realized with my gait, I would be dragging my right foot. I sprained my knee. Dr. Schmo is the one who found out my right knee reflex wouldn't kick in the way it was supposed to. And I got a knee sprain because of my knee reflex not kicking in, right? So, and it was because of my brain injuries. So I want everybody to pay attention to the different sensations in your body. The best thing you can do for yourself is keep a symptom journal. Write down how you feel, even if it seems inconsequential. In especially like women, like your cycle, your hormones. Like my cycle got so off and dysregulated, and I developed a hormonal imbalance because of the brain injury and the dysautonomia. So it's like, and when my mom brought up to the doctors, like, hey, like her period's like really off, and they were like, well, that can happen. And she's a teenager, whatever. Thank goodness they didn't put me on birth control, but that's what they normally would like put people on that to like so-and-so regulate, but it's just a band-aid. It's not going to help like actually what's going on. And I'm finally, after 2 years of supplements and working on this and seeing my chiropractor has a functional medicine background, and she's been helping me with nutrition and hormone counseling. I'm finally like able to track it with my basal body and be regular and like, and it's like, this is the first time that I've like actually am understanding my body. So I just want to tell everyone, like, all the systems are integrated. Now, with the dysautonomia, you asked what helps when you're flared up. Sometimes I just need to call it a day and like not do anything. And sometimes I need to do a restful activity, whatever that might be, like put on music. Not even, sometimes it's too much for me to play music, like just put on like music and like go to bed and try again tomorrow. Like sometimes like that's really all I can do. But I'm not gonna, some flare ups, you can kind of like work on it and like maybe work through it. Sometimes it doesn't happen. And realistically, like there is only so much that your body can handle. And I tend to push myself. I put a lot on my plate. And I think part of it was like, I don't know, this is like going a little bit deep, but like survivor guilt of like, why have I healed so much from this brain injury? And if I have, I need to do something to help other people. And I want to make my life worth something and turn my pain into purpose. And then I would push myself so hard. And the last year has been of like unlearning, of like thinking I have to do so much, and like when the Lord just like, no, like you can just be like, I can just be a child of God. I don't have to prove myself. Right. But I spent a lot of time pushing myself. I did a weekly chat every Tuesday at 7 p.m. for 7 years for brain injury on Facebook. 7 full years. And I stopped doing it last year and switched to monthly on Zoom. But like, I just would push myself so hard that I didn't give myself any space and margin. And like the Lord gave us Sabbath for a reason. And so like, we need rest. We need space. Our lives cannot be so jam-packed. That includes being on our phones. Like we were not made for hustle culture as a person. And then if you have a brain injury, you were definitely, you can't live like a hustle culture the way, like, you should not wake up and look at your phone first thing. Like, just don't do it. You're going to set your nervous system off. Right. So, like, I've had to learn, like, okay, the best thing, especially if I'm in a flare up, like, I have to do restful activities that feel restful to me. So it could be painting. I love to paint. I don't paint for any other reason besides the process of painting. I'm not trying to create a final product. It's just putting the colors and experimenting with colors. Like, I'll put on worship music and I'll paint and pray. I actually haven't done that in a while, which makes me want to do it. But watercolors or crayons or whatever, like something creative, or maybe you want to watch your favorite movie. For some people, that's restful. For some people, it's overstimulating. So you have to figure out what for you is going to be restful for you. Sometimes when I'm flared up, if I call one of my close friends and we have a nice chat, it calms me down. Sometimes that's too overstimulating for my brain. So it really depends. Sometimes I can go on my piano and I can sing and I can play. And sometimes I still have right-sided issues. Sometimes my right fingers just don't want to click the keys and it's not restful. And then I get frustrated with myself. Sometimes I can read my Bible or read a book. Sometimes my eyes don't feel like working and reading is not helpful. So I put it on a podcast. So there aren't really any like specific things besides listen to your body, attune into, is this activity calming for me? Maybe just go outside and stare at a tree. Like, like
No, but
just
really.
to find out like what is restful for you. Deep breathing is always a winner, especially when you're flared up with dysautonomia, because it's been proven scientifically to calm your nervous system. And so deep breathing's always a win. And I love to put on like one of my favorite worship albums or whatever and like deep breathe in rhythm to the song. That really helps calm me down. So
That's cool. I haven't thought of that idea. I like that deep breathing to the rhythm of a song. That's super interesting.
yeah.
But yes, the
Well,
deep
like,
breathing.
because I'm as a musician, like I know like the measures and like, I think and when I hear music, I don't just listen to it. Like I'm listening to the structure of the song or whatever. So like, if I breathe in for like 2 measures and then I breathe out for 2 measures is kind of like takes you into the song. I don't know.
I love that so much. That's so awesome. Well, I really appreciate that like the everything you just shared, that whole perspective, because it's very real. I think people need to hear that. Like sometimes this works for me, and sometimes it's totally the wrong thing, and it's overstimulating, and sometimes this doesn't. So I think that's just so helpful to know. Like it is an ebb and flow. It's changing always, and it's okay that it's not always the same. But if you know there are a few things that you can try that will calm the system, like our I like what you said earlier too, that our brains are wired to heal. Like God made us so that we will heal. And so it's just figuring out how to align ourselves to allow that to happen. So yes, the deep breathing is huge. And I love what you said about nature. It reminded me of a Bluey episode. Have you ever watched Bluey?
I love Bluey.
Bluey is like my favorite. I love it so much. But there's the one episode where it was the Born Yesterday episode where the dad is pretending to like he doesn't know anything and he was just born yesterday and he's like discovering the world anew. And he finds this leaf and he just stares at it and it's like such a beautiful experience for him that like after they're done playing the game, the wife looks out the window and is like, is dad done playing this game? And they're like, yeah, the kids were agreeing that yeah, he was done, but he was still just sitting outside staring at the sleep. I was like so
I love
touching.
that.
It
I've
is like
seen that episode.
yeah. Well, nature is so healing. And I just think, yeah, anyway, I love that part. So thank you for sharing all of those
That's
things.
so good. You know what? You should have I don't know, but you should have your like concussion like clients watch that episode and then calming nervous system practice would be to go outside and act like you were born yesterday and look at the
Yeah.
trees and look at, put yourself in that mindset. Like that sounds like a healing activity to me.
Okay, homework assignment for everyone listening right now. We're all going to do this. Pretend you were born yesterday and go discover the world anew. I love that. Great idea. Like writing notes. Okay, I will make my clients do this. So let's come back to this idea of setbacks and finding hope through the setbacks, because I know I think I've mentioned on the podcast before, I have a friend who that's like she loves the hope piece, but she wants the reality of like, okay, when I'm dealing with a setback, hope doesn't sound like something that I can pull on. So what do I do? How do you get through the setbacks? And it sounds like you've dealt with a lot of them over the years. And
Yeah.
what advice do you have for someone who is dealing with a setback in the moment?
Yeah, I think so. There's big picture dealing with it, and there's the reality of the day-to-day moment, right? So like I can start with the big picture. That's where hope is helpful. Keep perspective, right? And realize like this is normal in brain injury recovery. Everyone has setbacks. It's actually part of the process of healing. And when I come out of this, I'm going to be stronger for it. And I'm going to know what to do next time, right? And I'm going to be able to slowly continue moving forward. And keeping a perspective is super helpful. That's where like journaling, I think, is helpful. Prayer is helpful. Conversations with safe people. I say safe people because conversations with unsafe people are usually not healing or helpful. But if you have a safe person in your life that is encouraging to you, sometimes when I'm dealing with a setback, what I really need is a hug from a friend to tell me, like, you're doing great. It's going to be all right. And then also, big picture, asking for help, realizing that you don't have to push yourself to try and do everything. Maybe you can do things in a different way. For example, if dinner has to be cooked, maybe you make a larger batch so you have leftovers for tomorrow, right? And you don't have to cook 2 days in a row. Planning ahead and doing things like that can be like practical ways to help. But like, realizing like I don't have to make a different meal today and tomorrow. I can just put a whole bunch of chicken in the Instant Pot and just deal with that the rest of the week, right? So it's like, or frozen, like plan ahead for setbacks, right? When you're having a good day, like sometimes I like to plan ahead. Like if you made some like a food, this is just my examples right now because I just got married and I'm cooking a lot more. But if you like, made something and make extra to put in the freezer, so you have something that's healthy to pull out for yourself on the days that are overwhelming. Don't expect yourself every day to be able to do what you could do the day before. That's going to be your downfall in brain injury recovery. If you expect that every day you're going to be able to do what you could do yesterday, no. Like it's variable. Every day is going to probably look a little different. So like big picture, keeping perspective, not being afraid to ask for help, and also the more self-aware you can be of your flare-ups and the more self-aware you can be of your symptoms, that's where a symptom journal is really helpful, or a log. But like even being able to realize, like last night, my husband and I went to like a meeting at our church. And when we were leaving, we had to stop by Walmart to pick up a couple grocery things. And as we were leaving the church last night, it was like 8:30-ish. And I was done. Like my balance was a little off. And when he holds my hand, he can tell when my balance is off. And like my balance was off. And I was just like, I knew like I had no capacity to do anything. So he was like, just wait in the car. I'll run in and grab what we need. Right. But like in the past, I would be like, no, I can do it. Like, it's fine. I can do it. Like I can, but no, you don't have to. So, like you don't have to do all the things that you think you have to do. And then practically like on a moment by moment basis is like, every day, take inventory of today. What is like going to be on fire that has to be done today? Or can that pile of laundry sit till next week? It's fine. Like just wear your less favorite clothes for a little bit. It's like it is, unless like you're out of underwear, in which case, okay, laundry has to be done today. So it's like, but it's like what can wait and what can't. And pace yourself. Don't push yourself. And make sure you're drinking water and eating regularly. Healthy protein.
Yes. Amen. I love that. So what about I love that perspective of the big picture and the daily, and I don't know, you just said a lot of things. I'm like, oh, I want to touch on that. I love the idea. It's kind of similar. It's the same thing as like zooming in and zooming out. Like sometimes it is really helpful to zoom out, see that big picture, see the perspective. And then sometimes, especially like, I think if you're deep in it in the moment, you're like that, like I can't even go there. I can't
Sometimes
think
it's not helpful.
No,
Yeah.
it's not helpful. It's like the worst thing, right? And so then if that's the case, then you need to zoom in and be like, this day, this hour, this minute, like I'm going to get through this one time right here, right now. And sometimes that zoomed in is necessary. So I think both are it's important to recognize, okay, these are two tools that I have. Which one do I need right now?
Mm-hmm.
And I really, really love the planning ahead for setbacks. I like that's a new concept to me, but I think it's brilliant. Like, of course, like we can't expect every day to be the same as yesterday. It may be better, it may be worse. It may be, parts of the day are going to be better or worse, whatever. But like we can know that it's an up and down. And so we prepare ahead for the down.
Yeah. And it being aware of that, like giving yourself tools, like when I have a good day, like how can I help myself prepare for the inevitable tough day that's coming, right? And yeah, there are little practical ways like freeze food or just do something like that, or like organize something that will help you on those
Mhm.
harder days, right? Do the tasks that are a little more cognitively demanding so that you don't have to do it later. I
Yes.
think that's important.
It's so good. And it's like it's present Cristabelle taking care of future Cristabelle. Like, I got you, girl.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about you. I'll take care of you ahead of time. So good. And reaching out to other people, getting a hug, sometimes having somebody else holding that hope for you when you can't do it yourself can be so, so helpful. And I love too what you said about that self-awareness of the flare-ups. So like not pretending that it's not happening and resisting it, because that only extends the amount of time. What we resist persists. So we're like, okay, yeah, this is happening, and I'm going to accept it, and just rather than try to push through it, take care of myself in this moment. That is actually going to help you heal faster. Like, as ironic as it sounds to like take care of yourself in the moment and like not push it, that is actually what's going to be most beneficial usually. So I really love all of those perspectives.
Mhm.
Any
And
thoughts?
learning your limits.
Mhm.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to add learning your limits. Like that was something I had to learn very early on of like, okay, if I have a doctor's appointment and something else that day, that's all. I can do two things. That's
Mhm.
it. And realizing like what I can and like creating like a paced schedule that goes with your limits. Now those will change over time. So being able to reevaluate, like some
Mhm.
seasons you might be able to do more, some seasons you might be able to do less. I had a very, very busy October. So this month I'm paying for it. Like I've been flared up this whole week. And
Mhm.
I kind of expected it because like I flew to Nashville. I've had some traveling. I've had some events I've had to attend, some things I had like to do, and just some other overwhelming things that have happened. And I'm behind on my podcast. Like I haven't put out, I guess you'll be releasing this later, but like currently it's towards the end of November. I haven't released an episode in like over 2 weeks, and I should have had 2 more episodes out by now. And I haven't posted on social media, but I have not had the capacity. And there was a time that I would have been really hard on myself for that because I created an expectation for myself that nobody else had for me. Right.
Mhm.
So now I'm like, you know what? When I have capacity every day, I'm like, do I have time to work on this podcast? Not just time. Do I have capacity? And I've
Mhm.
been so spent physically that like taking a shower has been hard. So it's like, I just don't have the capacity and realize it's okay. Like, don't be hard on yourself for that. Like, it has nothing to do with your worth. It's just where your brain's at today. And I used to like misequate like my productivity with my worth. And that's not the case. Like, you are worth just as much on full days that you rest. You're a beautiful person either way, and not being hard on yourself for if you don't get things done. Or if you have to
Yes.
say no to activities. Like we were invited to a friend's housewarming party this weekend and we had to decline because I'm like, told my husband, I'm like, I want to see them. I really want to, but like I can't. Like I can't.
Mhm.
I can't do anything. I can't add anything. And so, I felt bad saying no, but I'm like, maybe we can figure out another time to meet up with them one on one on a day that I'm more rested.
Yes. Yes. Amen to everything you just said. Do you have any thoughts on dealing with so we talked about the zoomed out perspective, anything for the zoomed in, the day-to-day in the moment times?
Yeah, I think I did talk about that a little bit, but I think it's just, yeah, realizing where you're at, being very honest with yourself, brutally honest with yourself. You're the only one who knows your brain. And so, like, if you're sitting there and you're like, oh my gosh, the thought of looking at a screen makes me nauseous right now, maybe you shouldn't push yourself to go on the screen. Is there anything else you can do? Can you use Siri to text somebody, right? Like, what can you do to accommodate for where you're at? And please, please, please don't forget to drink water and eat, because like those things, like you don't realize how important they are. And when you're dehydrated, your brain function goes down. And man, like would always forget, and then I just end up worse and I'm not taking care of myself when I'm flared up. And don't be hard on yourself. And everyone's life is different. Everyone's responsibilities are different. Like, I'm not a mom right now. So like, I know people who have kids, like it's not optional to take care of your children and to feed them and to do what you have to do, right? So it's like there are certain things that do have to be done, but try and do it in a slower pace, in a way that can feel healing for you, and give yourself margin, and don't push yourself beyond what has to be done today. It's like, what am I putting on my plate and what is actually there? Like, is this extra, or is this, did you, when you go to a restaurant, it's like, you order a drink, an appetizer, and a main course. It's like, okay, well, your bill's going to be a lot more expensive. But like, if you're trying to do that with your day, it's like, well, maybe you just get water and you don't get an appetizer and you just get the sandwich, right? So it's like, you don't need all that. Just get what you need. I don't know. That's just a metaphor that came in my mind at the moment. But it's like, what items on your day are appetizers that you are equating to a main course just because you love fried pickles or whatever it is, It's like, just because, you don't have to have it. It's extraneous.
And it's more expensive. So it is
more expensive.
More. So that's actually really
I don't know why I said fried pickles. I've not been able to have one since I've been gluten-free. And my husband loves them, and I always watch him eat them.
That's so funny. It's something that I can relate to. Not necessarily about fried pickles, but yes, if you like somebody around you is having something delicious. Well, okay. I really do love that analogy and this whole conversation. I think that we might have to do this again sometime when you're up for it.
I would love to. Yeah.
There's like so many more things I would love to chat with you about. But why don't we have you share how people can hear more from you, like access, like I said, we'll probably I'm hoping we'll get to do another one of these and you can go more in depth.
Oh, I'd love to. We will.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
About what you're offering and how you help people. But why don't you give us a brief synopsis of that and then how people can find you? So
So my website is CristabelleBraden.com. My Instagram is Cristabelle Braden. That's where I post some more of my personal stuff, my music. And then my brain injury is Instagram, Hope After Head Injury. My website's hopeafterheadinjury.com. I run Zoom support groups, Zoom Bible study for brain injury survivors. I have my own podcast called Hope Survives, Brain Injury Podcast. And I have not officially announced this on my podcast yet, but if you're going to be putting this out, you're putting this out later this winter, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I feel comfortable sharing it. I'm starting a nonprofit right now. I'm in the process of filing the paperwork and doing all that stuff to expand the support groups. And so I'm going to be going into doing that a lot more full time in 2025. So right now we have once a month Zoom groups, but we're going to be expanding to offer them in more time zones and offering more programs, online workshops, and eventually branching out to more things. And so I'm excited. I just love to help people with brain injuries know they're not alone. It feels like a calling on my life. And so, yeah, you can get in touch with me, hopeafterheadinjury.com, my website, Hope Survives Podcast, and join us on Zoom if you want to hang out.
I love it. You have been busy, girl. Oh my goodness. And yes, I can see why you're spent. That's so cool. I'm very, very excited for this new resource that you're going to be putting out to help people. I love it so much. Love what you're doing and the energy that comes from you. Thank you so much for everything you're doing to help people out there and for sharing all of this. I think so much lived experience here and wisdom. So I really appreciate it. And I'm excited for another conversation in the future. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
I'm so glad you listened in today. I hope you have gained some helpful insights and inspiration regarding dealing with and recovering from concussions. My goal is to create more awareness and education about concussions and the fact that there is so much that can be done to improve life after someone has had one. Help me spread the message by liking, commenting, rating, and subscribing to this podcast, and share it with others who would benefit from hearing it. There are more resources available on my website. And again, if you or someone you love would benefit from concussion coaching, sign up for a free consultation using the link in the show notes or at my website, www.theconcussioncoach.com. Thank you. See you next time, and take good care of that amazing brain of yours.